Connect with us by visiting our website or email us at comments@rogerstv.com.
Smudging is a very important part in our life as we're all learning to walk the good way. When we smudge, we use the sacred medicine, the white sage, the sweetgrass, the tobacco, and the cedar. It cleanses negative energy and replaces it by a positive energy. When I smudge, I cleanse my end and my eagle feather and start cleansing my breath to have better words. I will smudge my eyes so I could see the better things offered to me. I will smudge my ears to hear the good thing that people have to say. I will smudge my hair to have good thinking from my head. I will bring the smudge to my feet so I could walk in respect with our Mother, the Earth. Smudging is the way we give our prayers to connect our spirit to the Creator. We express gratitude for the gift of life, the learning, and growth.
This is Rogers TV.
Support your local charities and win great prizes by playing bingo on Rogers TV.
You're watching Rogers TV. The opinions expressed in the following programs are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Rogers Cable or Rogers TV.
Hello, NB Polypod world. We are back for another week here in Mennequist in St. John, New Brunswick, on the unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq, the Maliseet, and the Pasquotomacati. I am on my own this week because Joanna, our co-host, is stuck in a clinic somewhere on the east side of the city. We've had a number of stellar guests, and Fred Laforge has been one of them, with Farmer's Truck, with Startup World, with entrepreneurship, social enterprise development. And so I'm gonna bring in Fred right now. And welcome to the pod. Welcome back to the pod, Fred.
Awesome. I'm happy to be here. It's been a little while. Already a year.
We get your comments once in a while, but we haven't actually had you back. You are actually the first guest we've had as a repeat offender, besides Sean Rouse. Sean Rouse is sort of like a pseudo co-host at this point in time of the show. But you're the first that we've actually pulled back for another meeting. So
I'm happy to be back. I'm happy. Listen, I listen to you guys religiously. I think that the work that you do is a labor of love and the love of community and love of politics. But I mean, at the end of the day, we need to talk more about it. We need people to show that politics is the world that we live in. That, like society, you need to listen to what's going on, especially in these moments like now, I guess.
Yeah, and I agree. It's like I have my 4 or 5 pods that I listen to try to at least round out the rough edges of my understanding on things. So when we have so much ambiguity flying around and so much at risk, I agree, it's even more important. And it's great to have another New Brunswicker on this pod. But you come from a different background, you come from a different place, you've got a different lived experience in this New Brunswick, this political landscape, but also just the landscape in general. So I'd love it if you could remind us and our new audience, because when we last did our interview with you, we didn't have Rogers TV kind of hanging around and bringing in an audience for local channel and everything like that. So I'd love it if you could give the group a little bit of a backgrounder, who you are, where you're coming from, and what you're up to these days.
Yeah. So Farmer's Truck, I guess I'll start with me. So my name is Fred Laforge. I am a New Brunswicker from Baker Brook near Edmundston. So I grew up on a farm. Basically did my college design course in Dieppe, which I really enjoyed, and then got into designing and got my own agency for quite some time. Basically, I've been an entrepreneur since as as long as I can remember. As a kid, I was drawing like little inventions, and I was trying to get kids at school to buy it. And like I've always been interested in entrepreneurship. And so back in 2015, me and my partner at the time, Mathieu, launched a thing called Farmer's Truck out of Capelé, New Brunswick. Farmer's Truck is a mobile farmers market who went around Moncton, Riverview, and Dieppe to get people to try and taste the great things that we grow in New Brunswick. So encouraging local farmers for an outlet for them to retail their product, getting people to discover what we grow, and making people fall in love with New Brunswick products, and at the same time addressing food access issues, right? So going to communities that doesn't have a grocery store. And surprisingly, when you look at a map, most of New Brunswick, a lot of places in New Brunswick are food deserts, unfortunately. Yeah. And
well,
forward,
we've got a couple of them here in the city of St. John, right? It's from an urban perspective, you think, oh, well, it's only across town. It's closer than going anywhere else. But when you have a poverty-ridden group of people that live in some of these neighborhoods, you can still have a food desert, even though there's a grocery store 4 kilometers away, because 4 kilometers is an awful long way to drag 3 or 4 bags of groceries.
And I mean, you have to think of as food as medicine through the lens of medicine, because if you would like try to put the same onus on the healthcare system, and you'd be like, hey, what's the return on this? Like buddy here keeps going to the hospital. Like that wouldn't make sense. Like at the end of the day, we want universal healthcare. We want everybody to have access to the same type of healthcare. And so it's fair, it's equitable. But something with food, we were like, no, let's put that in the commodity side of things. Let's just figure the free market's going to figure that out for us.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? The free market got us to where we're at today, where almost half of Canadians and Americans are pre-diabetic or pre-diabetic. You have obesity rates off the chart. You have people basically eating themselves to death. And so, anyways, that's kind of a whole conversation. But,
yeah, we're definitely going to go there. But I think it's such an interesting, I mean, you're an Acadian, you have a Francophone background, you started your business in Capelé, and where are you at today in that sort of, so you started in Moncton, let's pick it up there with Farmer's Truck, and now you've expanded quite a bit.
Yeah, so actually this year, Farmer's Truck is celebrating 10 years, which is mind-blowing. And right now we're in about 26 states, from Brooklyn, New York, all the way to Hawaii. We work with indigenous communities, we work with schools, we work with food banks, nonprofits on creating food access programs. And so they use these trucks to either reduce food waste, whether they're a food rescue organization and they put whatever they rescued on the truck and gives it to the community, or a straight up mobile farmers market where farmers are setting up their vegetable, whatever's in season. Every week it changes, they bring recipes, and they're really becoming a wellness community health prevention program more than a food, because food is medicine.
Mm-hmm. So, and how many provinces are you in besides states? So you're stateside, you've got a pretty wide berth there in the States. What about here in Canada?
We're about three provinces. Yeah.
Okay.
So the challenge in Canada is the difference in Canada is here we rely more on the government to take on these things. We say, listen, we'll pay more taxes, but we want a government to show up and kind of take care of that stuff for us.
Mm-hmm.
In the US, they are not so fans of taxes, and they want the freedom to give to who they want, and so that's the big difference. And a lot more donations and a lot more fundings for these things in the US, in my opinion, is because Canada here, we're already talking about universal basic income, which it makes a lot of sense to me to help families, and AI and everything that's coming our way that will need retraining and things, but it is not something the U.S. would ever consider. So they'll do everything but the root cause of what we're trying to fight for. Yeah.
Interesting. So the one piece that I wanted to touch on before we get into the food system piece, because, we'll probably have a working title for this around food sovereignty and farmers truck, New Brunswick, or something like that. Just like we'll work on a working title from that kind of precedent around food sovereignty, which is all of a sudden a hot topic when there is a buy Canadian only sort of patriotism, where there's a tariff wall going up around the United States that is going to impact Canadian growers, producers, manufacturers, the whole bit, to different degrees, it seems. But it seems like it's coming unless they get some serious concessions from this country, which is going to impact us one way or another. So it's all of a sudden a hot topic. The last time we talked about it, you and I and Joanna really talked about it from sort of a principle perspective, that like this is good policy. It may not, no one may be holding a gun to our head telling us we have to do it, but if we create these sort of localized systems, we'll be able to have more resiliency going forward. But now we're at a place where we may actually need that resiliency. And so from your experience, like where you've got an international business, you build these trucks, and different parts of the process go between borders. What has been sort of the starting point, or where are you at with your group now around that production cycle with this tariff threat, with this different relationship with the United States?
Well, I guess there are kind of two questions there. So the first question is really about like food sovereignty and food security as a country, which is its own. It's a national security issue.
Yes.
Food. If you looked at medieval time, poisoning the well. I mean, goodbye, see you later, everybody in that little town, right? So food is the exact same thing. So food is a national security issue. I guess I'll get back to that, but we'll talk about the tariff. So the tariff specifically, I mean, I, at this point, trying to not listen too much to what's going on until there is ink on paper and things are set in stone and going. So right now, I think there's a lot of huffing and puffing and some bullying going around. And, Canadians have been a fantastic neighbor. Mm-hmm. And I think most Americans agree with that. And I think most Americans did not vote for the challenges that has been put on the table for Canadians. So for us, it will affect us for sure, but it depends on how it's going to be played out. If they, when you are at putting tariffs on things, you need to be very clear about what that thing is. And oftentimes it's a finished product, not an unfinished product. So we might be lucky because we just transport our upfit to the U.S. and then it gets put together on the truck. There's ways to manage this, but at the end of the day, it's impossible to plan when you have this uncertainty. So you're kind of like, tomorrow morning I might wake up and get a punch right in the gut. Yeah. And I have to deal with it. Yeah.
And we're coming up on that in the next 15 days. They said, with early March, they were going to revisit this.
It's bullying. It's bullying. And, what I was hearing today is like they want to put 25% tariff on aluminum, but then they are talking about doing aluminum with Russia. And I was like, really? We get 25%, but Russia gets a deal with, what's going on here? So I don't know. Anyways, might be rumors, might be. Yeah.
Well, it's all up in the air now, but it does seem like there's a growing trend there. Okay, so your supply chains, just back to that, do you do all of your work in Canada? And what does that look like? So tell us a little bit about the truck or the model that you have that's your dominant model.
Yeah, so basically we build everything in Canada. So we create the box that goes on the way our truck works is really you buy the truck from Ford. That's who we work with. And then we design our box and it's fully made in Canada, and then it gets shipped to the US and then gets installed on the truck, and then it creates what they call a complete vehicle. So before the vehicle, it's called a chassis.
Yes.
And so the chassis is an incomplete vehicle, and once we put our stuff on it, then we wrap it up in a boat, then it's fully ready to go hit the road. So it's not too complex or process. We fought with the tariffs because they're already tariffs, 25% on ambulances and a bunch of other codes anyways.
Yep.
Now we're trying to fight that. Listen, we're not an ambulance. We're not this, like, you can't fit farmer's truck inside of a box with your tariffs. So we should not be considered a tariffable.
I see.
Right?
Yeah.
We're outside. And there was a ruling called the ice cream truck ruling, which we found out about, that they were able to kind of fly underneath, but never.
Interesting.
Yeah. And we're like, but they didn't want to give us that. So, we have to do our operations differently because of that. Otherwise, we would ship the truck directly from, assembled from Canada to the US, but it's okay. I mean, at the end of the day, we'll look at our options and we'll pick the best ones for us and our customer, because at the end, they're the one who bears the grunt of whatever flies. If we have to pay more tariffs, who's going to pay for that? The customer.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So good. Hopefully that gives I know we'll give our audience a good starting point here. So let's veer into the area of expertise. You've got a farming background. You grew up on a farm. The industry at this point in time, the different sectors, the different relationships. Obviously, there's been this bizarre reality around food in Canada, because a year ago there was just a real rising anti-Galen Weston, anti-Loblaws, anti-middleman sort of food system frustration with Canadians, New Brunswickers, who are paying more and more for groceries. And so you saw that starting to really push on the system as it is. And I like what you said at the first. When you leave things to the market, you get the market-driven results, and the market can only drive profit-driven results.
You get the worst of humanity.
Yeah. Oh, even starker than I would say, which is.
I mean,
tell me more.
Humanity is the humans are what it is. So I take humans at their face value.
Mm-hmm.
So if you leave humans with the goal of getting wealthier, then here you go. You have capitalism. Capitalism without checks and balances and some sort of protector. We have to fight for rights for workers, for consumers. There needs to be a balance, but it's a never-ending tug and pull relationship. And we're talking about the red dyes in the U.S. is a big conversation right now. California is removing the red dye. We've done this in Canada a while ago. It's petroleum. I believe it's petroleum based. Anyway, so it's linked to like ADHD and like a bunch of different things with kids. I'm like, so let me understand this. We are letting a food system, which is our medicine.
Yep.
Our body is what we eat. Dictate, and then I'm talking about the U.S. here.
Mm-hmm.
Health Canada is much better, but there's always place for improvement.
Sure.
In the U.S., they let the industry police themselves, which is wild. That no, it's wild. Like, and they say, as long as your ingredients you put in is a common ingredient, and what classifies a common ingredient? Well, a scientific said it was so what the industry is doing is they're coming up with these ways to make a cheaper product.
Mm-hmm.
They pay a scientist to say it's a good common product. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden that's what the FDA wants. That's all they need. And
well, oh my gosh, you don't have to go. If anybody's a John Oliver fan, John Oliver did a real scathing take on consultants, I want to say 9 months ago, where he talked about the McKinsey Institute or the McKinsey consulting firm, whatever it is, basically having this role of in the drug administration side of working for a big pharma group, trying to get basically a fentanyl grade drug available to children, while simultaneously having other consultants working with the FDA around building regulations for the fentanyl industry. So you had one company that had consultants working on both sides of the trenches, and it's just like, no wonder you have such a mess down in the States on some of these issues.
There's
So
a
it's
reason.
interesting. It's interesting you bring that up because it has, it's
There's a reason why you hire mercenaries, right? You don't use your own army. There's a reason,
right.
like Russia was doing in Africa and everywhere, or still is, I guess, in some places.
Yep.
The consultants are going to take the beating that you want them to take. I mean, how much money you're giving me? Sure, I'll go be the bad person, and that's how the
right.
Unfortunately, I think that the big seismic change that needs to happen is to change our optic with food from a commodity that we just have hanging around, that we throw out in the landfill, that we grow whatever hell you want to grow it this way, you grow it this way. Maybe because consumers are asking for organic, so we'll give them organic, but twice the price or whatever it is. We have to look at food like it is our medicine. Like it literally is. It would change our entire. And we've talked, about that last time about it. What a medical grade food system. Like if food is medicine, what is a medical grade food system? What would that look like? And I actually wrote an article on LinkedIn about that, talking about food hubs, talking about how we would freeze fruits and vegetables, especially in Canada. Like we have fertile land. We can grow a ton of stuff. But how do you preserve that? And then so geographically, we're not necessarily in a great place to grow, constantly. Like we have to make ends meet with hot houses and all kinds of different things. But we could design technology that leverages, let's say, the mine in Sussex that's been, holes in the ground. Basically, there's a lot of heat in there.
Yeah, geothermal.
You have a giant geothermal battery that's sitting there waiting to be used. Why not use that and then heat up a ton of, like, basically use that as a central heat system and then put somewhere hot houses all around it or something. Like there's ways to do it. If we change our optics on food, the answers are there. The technology is there.
And there's countries out there that have done this. It's funny. I was having a conversation with my old man. And he, my old man's an interesting politico because he's always paid attention. He's, a bit of an everyman type. He was head manager of a wharf, basically, that did all the ferry services in Charlotte County between Deer Island and Grand Manan and all this place.
Oh, that's cool.
And he did it for 30 years. And so he's always been willing to sway, right? Flip one way, go the other, different type personality over here with conservatives, different type personality with liberals. But he brought up this piece of the puzzle recently, and he said, we really got to get back to growing our own food, and we can't rely. And it was just kind of came out of nowhere. And I was like, Dad, to be quite honest, like groups like the Green Party, who I've of course been a supporter of and been involved with for years, I wouldn't say that I am to the same extent any longer. But they tried to put that in the window for years, and it hasn't impacted people. And so I want to talk about the politics of food for a second, because when you say we need to consider food like a national security issue, where it doesn't friggin' matter how expensive it is to do it. We want to be sustainable, and we want to have diverse, decentralized systems of production that mean peppers can grow in Sussex and peppers can grow in St. John's, Newfoundland. Like Holland has done this. They are a massive exporter. They have a massively integrated vertical farming system, aquaponics, hydroponics. They have the whole range of technology on full display for us to just be like, interesting policy. Let's just implement that here. Why do you think, we haven't made that this conversation around food hasn't made its way to become a hot button political issue? Because when you say it's got innovation pieces, it's got entrepreneurship elements, it's got localization requirements where, But here in Canada, we have such a centralized system where, the big meat packers are out in Alberta, and the big blueberry farmers are here, and maple syrup farmers are here in New Brunswick, and it's all centralized. And there's, if something happens between here and Alberta, we're not getting our beef anymore, right? Tell me a little bit about your perspective on that in your background.
Well, if you think about something that's a strategic national concern, like let's think about petrol, or fuel, for example. Well, if something happens and we have to go to war, this is what fuels our machines. This is what gets us to the war. This is what sends rockets to so it's a strategic initiative to have these reserves all over the place, and the US is the same, and most countries do the same. Like there's strategic reserves everywhere. I mean, we just have to think about the second we start thinking about food as a strategic concern for the entire country, as things change with climate change as well, when farmers are being affected, not able to grow, there's drought some places, there's too much snow in the other places, the temperament is changing, where New Brunswick is becoming a fantastic place to grow apples, and because of the milder weather, and it's perfect to grow apples. So a lot of orchards are starting to pop up. Well, not a lot, but you see them pop up. I don't know what the change will be. I think that it hurts when it costs too much money to do something. And right now, if you look at the GDP of New Brunswick, I think 41% of that goes towards healthcare.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly. I don't know a bigger red flashing sign for you that half of our GDP goes towards healthcare. And if we're able to shave off 5% of that because we're helping people have access to healthy food, and we see the results in communities being more productive and healthier. And, the Blue Zone concept, I don't know if you're familiar with Blue Zones.
No, tell me.
So Blue Zone is a phenomenon, and there's a whole show on Netflix, and there's in Miami, there's a whole building dedicated to Blue Zones. But essentially, it's a phenomenon that happens all around the world, in Okinawa, in Greece, in California, in places in South America, where these people live to be hundreds of years old.
Oh, right, the centurions, yes,
yeah,
right.
So they've studied this phenomenon, and I mean, I guess the takeaway is pretty simple. Humans are we're like water. So our environment affects who we are. Like if we have access to walk to get to our grocery instead of driving, if we get to have a more affordable food, we'll end up eating that more than anything else, right? So that's why, it's I don't know. It's a big change to think about food in this matter, in this fashion, to look at food as I don't know, almost like I don't want to say fuel, but like it's like we have to respect ourselves. I guess we're not respecting ourselves when we say, oh, whatever you put on the shelf is, Health Canada does a great job, but
do you think people are willing? So, I look at this and it's like, there's a level of celebration we have around our local food. There's a pretty big level of celebration around aquaculture in this province. We've produced the largest privately owned aquaculture company in the planet, right? Cook Aquaculture is now the biggest, right? They've acquired 5 other fisheries. They're in Chile, they're in Spain, they're in Portugal, they're all through the Maritimes, all through the eastern seaboard of the United States.
That's wild how big they are. Eh? And it took what? It took 15 years, maybe?
20 years. The province of New Brunswick played the classic build a billionaire equation, and they found a framework that was working and unique down in Charlotte County, and they built, Gifford Cook from nothing. Gifford had, he wasn't even the first to have salmon cages and a hatchery and all of that. They just kind of fell into it, and Gifford had lots of local connections and people respected Gifford, and he built on that. But they're a massive, massive international company now. And so we have some celebration for blueberries and maple syrup and all that, but there just isn't this tie politically. And this is one of these things that, like, as a political podcast, we have to bring it back to the politics of it, because the politics drive the outcomes. And in any situation, and I've been on both sides of this, and I'm a young politician, you can't drag the electorate all the time, even though you want to, right? Even though you get a good idea, that good idea is fact-based, it's researched, it's the best, it will produce the results, it will. And it's unfortunately, if it's not galvanized locally at the electorate level with the people, you can have all the good ideas you want, and they'll just tell you to go pound sand and we'd rather be like this, and you just have to say, well, it is like this, so I told you so. And that sucks.
You can bring the horse to the river, but you can't make him drink.
Yeah, but then there is times when strong leadership can and vision can drag the electorate into an issue where, you look at the issues that Donald Trump put on the table during his campaign. Many of them weren't on anybody's radar, years before that. So I guess the question is, like, do you have sort of a model or a framework or a leader or an author or somebody in mind that would like that you get that inspiration from to continue to drive this type of change and this type of tone around our food system?
We're very grassroots. Like our core competency is to reach out to absolutely fantastic individuals who are ready to move mountains for their community. And the only thing they're asking for is support and tools to do it. So finding these individuals is something. So that's how Farmers Truck gets to rally efforts. And I think that politics is the same. Now, if you're trying to make a problem out of something, which is like, we've seen the conservatives do that often, right? With, policy at schools, with naming conventions with kids, and just things that are complex enough to get, I guess complex is not the right word.
No, I think that's true.
Well, it's just, you need to understand a little bit more than the majority of people to understand how.
Yeah, it's a convoluted topic, right? Yeah, absolutely.
And then all of a sudden, I'm making this a normal topic. All of a sudden, I want everybody to share their opinion about this. But you're like, well, is anybody freaking able to share something that makes sense? That because they don't know what they're talking about a lot of times. But anyways, the grassroots approach, I think it's where it's at. And the flavor of the month changes often, right? So like you were saying, a couple months ago, we were, Loblaws and the bread price fixing issues and and all the, the whole pandemic, we felt like we were being squeezed, and we still feel like we're being squeezed. And not just that, it's just, inflation, I guess, overall is but Canada's doing better than the US anyway. So I guess that's a bit of a silver lining. Yeah, I don't know. From a politics standpoint, I think it's all about grassroots. So if you're about to galvanize the conversation, most people would say that, hey, listen, I'd like to have some healthy food. Like I'd like to eat. Not everybody, and it surely isn't taught in our schools that food should be more important. If you look at the Japanese school system, or if you look at the Netherlands, the completely different world. Like they have a dietitian on staff that has laws to follow, that she cannot even buy paste from this. She has to make the paste from scratch and the school so that it's as nutritious as it possibly gets. Harvesting things, so the time it takes from the harvest to the plate, it affects the nutritional value of that product. So like that.
Fred, but if we do it that way, how will we ever make money off Ozempic?
And that's the other thing too. Ozempic is like, are you talking about you're gonna give that away for 6 weeks? Like I'm talking with doctors. We're part of food as medicine movement in the U.S. We're part of like all kinds of different conversations, and everybo's clear about it. It's like this is just a temporary Band-Aid for someone who's really incapable of, and that happens. Yeah. Some people have challenges with food, and the relationship with food is difficult sometimes. There's stigma and
sure.
trauma in there and
Yep.
all that stuff. But that's going to patch someone for a couple of 6 weeks. Those who continue it for, I don't know, maybe a lifetime will most likely get some negative impact out of that. I'm sure there's going to be some studies for the long term. Yeah. At the end of the day, I'm going back to the blue zone, which was the whole idea, right?
Yeah.
Blue zone is we're very simple. It's a Mediterranean diet. It's oftentimes less meat, more fruits and vegetable.
Mm-hmm.
Do exercise every day. So a lot of times these communities, they live in a mountainous area, so they were going up the mountain a couple times a day. Just that. Just we don't need to run Ironman. You don't have to go to CrossFit. You just need to move your body a little bit every day.
Yeah.
They're tendering their gardens, and they spend a lot of time socializing with others. And that's something we forget, how that impacts our well-being, to be with others. So combining all that together is what we call blue zones.
So you've taken this sort of supporting role around food as medicine and that approach in the States. And you and I were talking before we got onto the pod here. You've attempted to play a little bit of a role as an advocate for some of this here in New Brunswick. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because we've suffered a little bit of a loss, I would say, in New Brunswick politically under leadership with the loss of Kevin Arsenault, right? As a farmer who had a co-op farm, who worked with local farmers, who understood the plight of people trying to grow, their own food and develop their own systems, and who did an entire tour of New Brunswick, agriculturally, try to bring forward good policy solutions on that. And now we've got an old liberal up there in his seat, and we don't hear anything about that kind. So I have to say, from a topic perspective, we've lost some institutional memory, we've lost some momentum. But you've attempted to step in there, and you've attempted to kind of have a conversation. So tell us about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, at the end of the day, the government and most government see food as luxury.
Mm-hmm.
Not a luxury, but like this stuff. Governments in New Brunswick, we focus on. What other industry could we bring in? How do we grow the economics of New Brunswick, really? And we don't pay a whole lot of attention to food, because we're trying to say, hey, food should, kind of control its own. And the facts are it shouldn't. The facts are it should. But for the government of New Brunswick to stand and say, okay, now we're going to have an ag strategy. And we want to double the amount of farmers that we have today, or at least the farmable land, or at least make sure that our farmable land is not reducing every year, that we actually maintain it, or however it is, or access to land for farmers. Like, there's all kinds of ways that we can make this more accessible, but it's hard to make a priority when everything else seems much more important for the government.
But if you think about it, there's some synergy here. So when you talk about something as simple as access to land, right? I remember a statistic from my environmental science professor at Mount Allison. And, he said a staggering fact to us. We were all climate warriors. We were all climate change activists. This was pre-Greta Thunberg. This was, we were just getting out of the inconvenient truth era and into some brass tacks around climate activism. And I was right in the middle of that. And, he said, look, it may surprise some of you that there's more forest on the eastern seaboard of the United States now than there was 150 years ago. Why is that? Because back in those days, they had cleared so much land for subsistence farming. And he said, so when we get into these conversations about climate change and forests and trees and rewilding, we have to remember there has been progress made in some things, but that has come at the cost of other locations. And so with New Brunswick, we used to farm like 40% of our farmable land. Like, this is 100 years ago. I don't know what the number is now. I don't know.
And the thing is just that the companies, they keep buying more land, or it's just, like McCain, for example, in Grand Falls, I believe they were, I don't know, maybe I'm spitballing here, 150, 200 farmers, I guess, and now it's maybe boiled down to like 6 or 7 that they're basically own most of the potato farming.
Right. And so you look at that and you say, well, what would it cost us to coordinate with JDI, who goes in and clear cuts a ton of land every year that we give to them for a pittance? And then, which puts us in trouble in international trade courts it does. It causes quite a bit of grief to our competitors because it's an unnatural advantage to basically give away your forests for nothing and allow a private company to make money off it and put those products on the market. And so we are in trouble on that front. But like you think about that and you say, how have we not thought ahead here and said, if JDI is going to do expansionary work around clear cutting, we're going to require them to do some just general area prep around agrible land where there's already farms, where there's already agrible land. It's like when I think about these things, it's like I can't be the smartest person in the room. So how is it that we're not synergizing that? Because that's a double impact, right? Yes, you get the woods, you get the trees, you get the product, and a little bit of extra work goes into that front end, and now the land is cleared in a way that makes it accessible to somebody to expand their footprint in that farming, because years and years ago, that's the only way Canada survived.
I mean, there's more challenges than, clearing out land. There's land right now that could be like the farm in Baker Brook, for example. We could lease the land for some crops or whatever, but there's just very little farmers to take it on. And so if you think about today being a farmer, you have all the headwinds. You're buying retail, selling wholesale. Number one, like everything you buy is retail. You buy your tractors retail, your seeds are retail, your everything is retail. But then you have to compete with, all the other big guys who are growing stuff. And unless you have some sort of very solid contract with somebody who's going to buy all your crop, like with a food hub, for example, and which I want to talk about, Co-op Atlantic.
Yeah.
Co-op Atlantic.
Mm-hmm.
Co-op Atlantic was a jam that we had. That built this buying local, supporting local, family. Everybody had their membership number back. Like co-op. That went away. Why did it went away? Because we didn't really. Well, like anything, I guess things grow old. Sometimes it grows legs. Sears could have been the Amazon, but they just they put their nose up. So. Maybe that's what happened at Atlantic Co-op. I don't know. But Atlantic was exactly what the farmers needed. They would help you plan your ahead of time. Like, okay, I'm going to buy your crops, so it'll help you pay for some of the seeds and whatever.
Right.
But right now, it's just everything is against you if you want to start farming. It takes a big, they say, if you want to make a small fortune farming, take a big fortune and buy a farm. Like, it's a joke. It's a joke. It's literally like everybody... 87, and I know this because I was in Washington, D.C., and Secretary or former Secretary of Ag, Vilsack, Mr. Vilsack, was talking, and he said, 87% or 86 or 87% of farmers today have a second job so they can keep farming. So what's going on? Like, where are we not walking into a wall, like with our food system? Are we just like sleepwalking into this national security issue that I'm seeing this coming? Like, if we, especially in Canada, because we, I don't know if there's some blockage or I don't know what that would be, but food is difficult to grow here in winter, so we need.
Well, we know they're after our dairy limits and our dairy production and our supply chain management systems. Like, that's one concession that basically, when you listen to Janice Stein on the Peter Mansbridge project, The Bridge, when you listen to some of the thought leaders who actually understand what it is Trump's after and the type of personality he's and the people who are behind it who have been talking about different things. Supply chain management around the dairy industry has almost for 50 years now been a crosshairs that the US has sort of just said, well, we don't like that. And so I wonder, like, what your thoughts are there. Like, do we need to double down on that supply chain management so that we can have a diverse food set that our provinces produce internally?
So the U.S. has a very strong dairy sector, right? So
Yep.
they are loud and clear about what they want, and they want to expand. And Canada's the next door neighbor, so that makes sense to them.
Yep.
How do I feel about our supply management system? Well, I tell you what. You look at the egg side of things, eggs,
Yep.
and what that's still we used to make vaccines. So there's some stuff we do that there's a purpose that more than just food, and
Sure.
strategically we want to support it.
Yep.
Is dairy that product? That's my question. If I have to choose as a Canadian, what am I going to support with this type of supply? Because right now, all Canadians are paying a lot more for butter and milk and whatever else than in all the other developed countries when it comes to their dairy, because we have a supply. And so essentially, all Canadians are taxed more around dairy products to support the dairy industry.
Right.
I'm not saying the dairy industry, I love cheese. I'm, poutine, come on, let's go. But let's go. But if I have to subsidize something and support something, it's fruits and vegetable. It's fruits and vegetable. That's what's missing. That's what's missing in our diet. That's what we need to eat more of. They say you need to eat 3 portions of vegetable and 2 portions of fruits a day. Brent, have you had that ratio in the last week?
Oof. No, right now my vitamin C is coming from literally vitamin tablets.
I was going to say Flintstones.
Not Flintstones. No. Good old Costco brand. But yeah, it's difficult because we do have clementines in the house. We do have apples in the house. We do try to get into the vegetable side of things, but it is difficult. Only because when we're shopping, it's like, how do we walk out of the grocery store without spending $300?
That's why they do mobile markets. The mobile markets, they go and they buy wholesale and they sell it pretty much at cost. So your experience at a mobile market would be, $5-10, and you get out of there with 2 bags full of whatever fruit and vegetable. And that experience is designed to give communities dignity. So they don't feel like they're on the special bus. They are getting fruits and vegetables just like everybody else at this mobile market, and everybody's happy. But in the background, it's a nonprofit that runs this. And their intent is to connect with as many people in the community as possible and make this an exciting adventure for them to come back every week. And so some programs are giving away food, and there's a space for that. There's emergency food situation. But the large majority, we're talking like 80-90% of the families, they're low-income families.
Right.
They need a hand. They just need to have, listen, if I could buy fruits and vegetable every week from this truck for really cheap, then I'm probably going to eat more fruits and vegetable.
Yeah, you'll figure out how to cook them. You'll look up recipes. You'll do that.
We're like water. At the end of the day, if you grew up on chicken nuggets and fries, okay, you have some ways to go. One thing I'm excited about is, and I'm a ADHD neurodiverse kid, and sensory issues with food, and so the next webinar we're doing is with as a doctor, a pediatric doctor, and she came up with a bunch of education and literacy for parents to get their kids with sensory issues to start kind of getting into the vibe of like eating fruits and vegetables. And if you set kids right from the get-go to like fruits and vegetables, then you kind of set them up for success for the rest of their life. So
100%. And it's one of these things that when possible, I try to, give people some inspirational folks to look at and people who are talking about it. And the one that comes close to me around food systems is George Monbiot. I don't know if you have ever spent a whole lot of time. He's an author out of the UK. He's an editorial or an op-ed writer for an opinions columns writer as well for The Guardian. And, the one thing George Monbiot thought it was 4 years ago now, I think, during COVID, he was talking about our global systems and saying, does anybody realize here that 6 weeks after the Suez Canal was blocked with that tank with that shipping container ship that was stuck in the locks for weeks because just human error. That's 6 weeks after that, due to conflict and, again, realities, just things happening. The Turkish Straits were blocked. And if those two things would have happened at the same time, this data tells us we could have lost thousands of lives to starvation because our supply chains are so arrive on time, so dependent internationally. And we saw during COVID, the empty shelves and flour going through the roof and all this. And so, for me, it's just like we try our best on this pod to nuance an issue. And I think what you're helping us do in this conversation is to see, like we as a province, we have some thought leaders, we have some people who are just really waiting to be asked to contribute and waiting for government and the local communities and our economies to start to move some things out of the way so that we can start producing the things we need. And, food has to be at the top of our list.
If tomorrow morning we say, you know what, New Brunswick, we are going to be the leader in food as medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to tackle our healthcare costs, epidemic, whatever you want to call it, and address that full on. I mean, there's more studies than I can count that will tell you that the positive outcome of helping people have access to just fruits and vegetables, like
right.
easier access, so they're more in their lives every day or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And there was another study done on medically tailored meals specifically. So like for an individual who has, I don't know, some sort of a diet related issue, illness,
yep.
And getting them the right meals at the right time for a certain period of time, the impact is beyond what the states are able. And they're like, just implementing this alone would save us money. And we're talking about a chef that cooks you a meal and sends that to your house. So from a cost perspective, that's probably the most expensive outside of pharmaceuticals. Like that's a whole other level. But like as a treatment option, like it's a very, it's the most expensive food as medicine treatment, but it's the most affordable treatment in general. And then if you go really down to the basics, it's really just make fruits and vegetables accessible so that people can go and buy it every week. They can fill up their cupboards and they'll eat an apple when they're hungry because it's just the easiest thing to do. And all of a sudden you're going to see the change. And our healthcare costs right now in the US, it's about 80 to 90% of healthcare costs is diet related. So you can imagine the opportunity of changing the system with simple things like food.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have to reinvent an Ozempic. We don't have to get people to go to CrossFit. We just need people, at least for the diet part. They want people to move, and we want people to have social lives. There's other challenges, and
sure,
but they call that really social determinants of health.
Yeah. It's a wide ranging conversation, right? Because when we think about the unique position that I've talked about on this pod before about maybe the tariffs won't be a terrible thing. And when it comes to a lot of things in the next 2 to 3 years in the short term, of course, it's going to be a terrible thing. There's almost no way around that. Mm-hmm. But so many people have been talking about interprovincial trade barriers, and the difference is, it's like, why haven't we done it? Because we haven't needed to, because every province has its trading partner as the United States, and it doesn't need to give about, like New Brunswick doesn't need to care about how to work better with British Columbia, or anybody in between. But we should care, because we are one nation, but we don't have the reality in place to be able to support that type of continuity.
It's going to be a hard pill to swallow for a lot of, some province kind of came up with their own competency to compete, right? So
Right.
some specific industries would, we spray a lot of glyphosate here, which would be stopping that, obviously. But now we have to accept that we're going to play as one team.
Yeah.
And we are one team. But not that old of a team. We haven't been a confederation for a long, long time. But we can be a team. But we have to accept that Alberta's going to kick at doing oil stuff, and Quebec's going to kick at doing anything with electricity, like you name it, right? So aluminum, green, whatever. Ontario's going to hit differently in certain places. BC's going to hit differently, but there's going to be some losers. There's going to be some big winners. But those who don't want this change is most likely because they're going to be the biggest loser. But they have to look at it beyond, and that's a hard sell, right? You were talking about bringing the community to see bigger than what's in front of us. Well, in politics, it's like whatever's here, right? So to try to sell their community that, we're going to get hit at the beginning, but in the grand scheme of things, Canada as a whole will be much stronger, much easier to work with. You and I should be able to go work in Alberta, come back and not have to figure around with our licenses and all this garbage and things like that. We should have mobility. We should have the beer tax in New Brunswick or the alcohol tax. Like, we have the oldest alcohol laws, and alcohol should, in my opinion, should be labeled like cigarettes. It's a class 1 cancer carcinogenic. Yeah. So it should. But anyways, that's we should look at all our policies and let's make Canada even on most front, and let's play game. Let's play game.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
But it's so hard to get the politicians who want to hold up those things in front of us. So I think this is a conversation we're going to have to keep coming back to, because the whole hope of this pod was that we'd get an audience of New Brunswickers who are engaged and interested and want to go deeper than just the surface level sort of general media perspective, which gets you an inch deep and a mile wide. And get into some topics and some intrigue. And I think what you're helping us see here, Fred, with a lot of this is that there's an entrepreneurship piece to this that requires us to change gears. There's a food systems perspective that requires us to change gears.
And I'll build on that real quick. And one thing that I've realized is you and I, Brent, and most people that we talk to, we're social entrepreneurs. Like we see a problem and we run at it. Like we want to change things, and we're trying to build models that are able to pay for itself in order to do the good that we want. Like we go above and beyond, and you need entrepreneurs for that. My call to action for your audience is let's build more social entrepreneurs. Because if we always ask the government, hey, listen, we have this problem here, we pay a lot of taxes, come and fix this. I mean, we should hear from them, obviously. It's our government, but we should also think, well, maybe there's a different way to fix this. Everybody's got their own little story and trauma and whatever happened to you that makes you very sensitive to a specific social issue that you want to put up a fight with. Use that energy, that fuel, to go and come up with solutions and fight for what you think is right. That's
start a business, start a nonprofit, make it sustainable. I will say this is our first year, the Tool Library, my nonprofit, is the first year we don't have any need to write a grant. It's taken us 6 years.
That's a big deal.
It's a big deal. Now, if we get our kicked on asking for money for some of these housing construction related activities, it will seriously put us back in that zone. But it's the hard work of trying, like you say, the social enterprise piece. It's the hard work of saying, what needs to be done here? Who wants to do something about it? How do we build with them? Because I can't build with who's in Calgary, even though there might be smarter, faster, whatever people, companies or supporters there. You have to build with who you have and what you have, where you have it. And it's a much harder task. And I totally agree. Right.
But you could inspire. I mean, and when I hear you talk about the causes that you take on, that you challenge, that you push and you push through, how hard it is. I mean, we need more Brents. We need more Freds. We need
more
Freds.
Freds.
More
Yes.
Joanna. We need.
I know.
But let's create a space for that. Let's make a space for New Brunswickers to feel like, I can do something. I will do something. It has to be selfless. You need to take yourself out of the equation, and maybe you're going to eat ramen noodles for the next 5 years, and that's how it is. But you know what? Your legacy, you will have changed something for the good, most likely, hopefully.
You'll be getting fruits and vegetables to kids in Brooklyn. That'll be the legacy.
Or at least you tried. Least you tried. Yeah.
So we got to wrap it up here. Farmerstruck.com. Here's the banner. Here's the tag. You got to check them out. Lots of ways to get involved with what Fred's doing around this. And I'm sure reaching out through any of these channels, any of these contacts that you find there, Fred will get in touch to you. We're going to keep this conversation going. We're going to try to get some political animals involved with this to push back, but also to, I think this is a good year, right? Where we have tariffs that are now going to be imposed or potentially imposed, and at least having to worry about it in general, whether or not they come on board here in March or not. We have to worry about it now all of a sudden. And that's going to affect food. And we've already been paying too much for food, for the wrong types of food, as you pointed out, Fred. So
Canada's going to grow stronger out of this. And when there is turmoil, like Churchill said, never waste a good crisis. So there's opportunity.
If you're going through hell, keep going. So thank you so much, Fred. It's been a pleasure. And thank you so much, folks. We'll talk to you again in 7 days.
The following program was provided by a valued member of our local community. Rogers TV is proud to support local producers and share local voices, ideas, and opinions. For more information, please visit our website.
Welcome to the Lou and Sue podcast,
where we chat about life, love, and what we've learned.
So grab your cutest mug
and join us.
Hi.
Hi.
Welcome to the Lou and Sue podcast. In today's episode, we're calling it Wrecking Ball.
I came in like a wrecking ball.
It's all about dating a narcissist.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So we were, do you want me to do the update first?
Yep.
Okay. First, before we go into the topic, I'm going to do an update from last week. I had mentioned...
Update from the Girls Just Want to Have Fun.
From the Girls Just Want to Have Fun,
so if
exactly.
you haven't seen...
Go back and watch that first and then come back
this is
here.
what the update's for.
That's right. So last week we were talking about how my church on the Christmas Eve service, which, they I'm confused about what I'm saying right now. Okay, so they were raising money for houses and people in Bolivia. I'm probably gonna butcher the name of this disease. It's Chagas. And it's basically carried by bugs and it causes disease. Am I messing this up?
No, okay. I think you're good.
Grinning.
I'm laughing because I have no idea if that's the right pronunciation.
Oh, okay.
I can't correct you.
Yeah, I don't either. So anyways, look it up for yourself. It's CHAGAS. And anyways, we raised enough money for 82 families to be protected from this.
That's exciting.
Yeah, so I just wanted to update you guys on that first. Mm-hmm. But back to the topic at hand. Mm-hmm. So we did, this past weekend, we did the Nordic spot here in our hometown, Evolve. And
yes, the Evolve thermal experience. We can link it in the description.
It was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
We weren't sure going into it if we were really going to like it or not, because there's like polar plunge. I made it up to a full minute.
Yeah.
And
so this is both of our first experiences doing it at all, but we've constantly discussed that we want to, and we want to, and we want to. So we finally, made an excuse and just did it. Yeah. So you do the sauna first, 15 minutes, your body's nice and hot, and then you do the cold plunge.
Yeah.
And
and it's
That's what was psyching me out, was the cold part.
yeah.
But it actually feels really good after being in that heat for 15 minutes.
Yeah, and the thing is, your core is so hot that when
Yeah.
you do the cold plunge, I suggest you pee before you do it.
Yeah.
Um,
It's a good suggestion right there.
yeah, you're welcome. The